Now, I thought I knew all of your music, Bryan, but your first single I'm looking at here is one that I don't remember. I'm not familiar with it, but I love the title. It's called Eugene Eugenius.
Yeah,
A top 50 hit, but it got you started.
that's a song. I mean, if you listen to certain times in music, you always hear trends. And I think at that time, we had already kind of sewed up the album, but the label didn't think we had a first single. They wanted something that was, kind of honky tonk and something up tempo that we could kind of ride in on, and that was the song that came across the desk, and my good friends Lonnie Wilson and Billy Lawson wrote that, and I just jumped in there and sang it as best I could sing it, and next thing I knew, it was out and shooting a video and all kinds of crazy stuff. So that was the first single.
First single, so now you're out on the radio and feeling pretty good about yourself, right?
Well, I think ultimately in the beginning, I couldn't believe I had a single that was on the radio, and we had that kind of promotion behind it, and I really didn't give much thought to, oh my gosh, this has got to be a hit. It's got to be a hit. I can't say that my mind was focused on, I didn't really worry a whole lot then. I was just like, hey, we cut a record, and my family, I think I was just kind of I wanted my family to see that this had turned into something. I wasn't just, just chasing this thing. It actually all came together, and they're seeing the video on CMT, and for me that was a huge accomplishment, because I think everybody seeks the approval of their family. Anybody that tells you they're not, they're lying. And back then that was it for me. I was like, I just wanted them to know that I was doing what I love to do. I was getting better at it, and so yeah. I felt very fortunate that it was all sort of playing out the way it did.
And then your next single was one that you actually co-wrote, and Look at Me Now, and it performs better on the charts. What's the difference in, releasing a song that somebody else wrote, it's your first single, and then now a song that you had a hand in writing and it's doing even better? What's that difference in feeling like?
I try to think and think back, and so I can answer it best, but I always end up saying the same thing. It's kind of an unreal, sort of a numb, kind of a dreamy sort of a feeling. It's sort of hard to put into words, but when I realized it was starting to actually, push up the charts a little bit more than our last single, and it happened to be a song that, we wrote, and we worked really hard on that song too. Derek George and John Tiro and I, we had a really awesome synergy there for a while, and I remember that song, we wrote the song and pretty much knocked it out in a day. And I had this old cheap Tascam 4-track recorder, and that's how we recorded the demo. And but it was just good enough to, that my producers, Billy Joe Walker Jr. and Kyle Enning, liked it, and they thought that it had a real identity to it. And it was like, I think probably Look at Me Now was one of those songs that had such an identity that I think it played into how the rest of my first record, ended up going style-wise. I think it sort of dictated where a lot of things went. And, it was just awesome to have a top 20. And it was really surreal being that young and it being our second single. I did kind of always have this thought in mind of, we're going to have to, push and work hard for a long time before we see anything happen, and that happening as soon as that did, I was just like, wow, this is really crazy. And then, not having any money and then getting a check, of a significant amount at 20 years old, I was like, holy wow, Batman, this is really awesome. So I'm going to be able to eat for a while.
Yeah, and if nothing else, those two songs helped set the stage for an incredible 1995 for you. The next two singles were also off the debut album, Someone Else's Star and my personal favorite, Rebecca Lynn, both number one hits for you, and were written by Skip Ewing, who wrote a few, if not several, of your songs, right?
Yeah, Skip, I mean, I won't say he owned the 90s because there were just a ton of great writers that had really great runs, and we're also grateful for those writers. But Skip and I had a really good run together, and I don't think we planned it that way. He was just writing so many good things, and they all just seemed to well, not all of them, but a lot of them just seemed like they were, tailor-made for my voice, and the subject matter was great, and it was just a great combo there for a while.
Let's start with Someone Else's Star, because that became your first number one hit. When you recorded it, when you released it, did you have an idea that, hey, this might be the one?
I don't think so. I don't think anybody can. It's like Quincy Jones, when he did his big interview with, I guess it was GQ, he said, they asked him and said, do you know when something's going to be a hit? And he's like, no, you don't know that. Nobody knows that. He said, if they tell you that, they're crazy, And he's right. I think you definitely feel a magical thing about them, from hearing the song to knowing it's one you want to record, to when you record it, you know whether it's magical or not. And it definitely had those elements. Someone Else's Star was, I'll tell you a really unique, great story about Someone Else's Star. So Billy and Kyle, my producers, they thought, it might be wise for us to grab these handful of songs that we've got here and go in and let's do some guitar vocals of them, and just let's analyze them and see which ones feel good and which ones don't. And Billy, jumped in a booth and played acoustic guitar, and I jumped in the vocal booth and sang, and one of the things that we came out with that was just serendipitous and great, and it felt awesome, felt tailor-made for me, was Someone Else's Star, and we liked it so much that I sang it one time. I was just so young, I didn't know that we could do it a bunch of times. I just thought, I got to knock it out, one time, and so we kept the analog tape of that, guitar vocal demo that we did, and Kyle had this brilliant idea to add to it. They just added piano to it and steel guitar and fiddle and a few percussion elements, and that was it. So they basically just kind of painted around this guitar vocal demo that was a one-take vocal that I did, and they didn't think it needed anything else, and they were right. It didn't. It ended up being a demo became my first number one record.
Wow.
So, crazy.
That's really cool and also impressive. With Rebecca Lynn, it would have been about 8 years ago. My wife is pregnant with our first child. We're about 4 months out from go time. We don't know if we're having a boy or girl, but we're driving around, and Rebecca Lynn comes on the radio, and we just both look at each other like, yep, if it's a girl, that's what we're going to name her. Sure enough, December of 2012, we have a girl, and we named her Rebecca Lynn because I grew up listening to that song. I've always loved it.
Are you serious? Wow. That is awesome.
Yep, and same with my wife. She's probably an even bigger fan than I am. So her name is Rebecca Lynn Johnson, named after your song, which was being played on the radio probably almost 20 years after it was released back in 1995. That's how much staying power that song has. And I'm sure there's thousands, millions of other people just like me who relate, to that song like we did.
Well, I think that's amazing, man. I'm so honored. That's so cool, man. I love that.
Thank you. And yeah, Becca turns 8 this December. You have any stories about recording that one?
Well, on the same token, that was one of the other songs that was kind of in that series of songs that we did in pre-production for my first album with, guitar vocals. And that was one that just turned out really well. But ultimately, obviously that's a full track and more of a production on that. But I think what was really predominant about that track and really helped a lot was finding the right key for me, because I remember experimenting with lots of different keys and different kind of styles, and Skip Ewing's demo of that song was a little bit more. It was really fast and a lot of rolling acoustic, kind of James Taylor-esque type stuff, and Billy had the really brilliant idea to really slow it down and give it a little bit of a swing, and kind of just gave it a little bit more of an innocent feel about it. And so there was a little bit more experimentation for that song, but it ultimately paid dividends, because those guys, they knew what they were doing with that material back then, and I was just a kid. I was just trying to keep up, So, but it worked out, and I remember just loving singing the song. It was just so fun, and I love the way the lyrics just bounced, and I love what it talked about, and ultimately, even back then as a kid, that was what I dreamed of. That lyric, that kind of life is what I always dreamed of, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm doing life with the love of my life, and I got two awesome kids, and it's not I don't mean it's exactly like Rebecca Lynn, but it's the elements of it are I think what we all sort of dream of deep down.
Yeah, same here. You grew up listening to a song, and then you end up kind of living the song. Yeah, it kind of comes full circle. And that was my experience too. And I miss songs like that. It seems like we don't have as many songs like that anymore that tell a story but paint such a perfect picture while they're doing it. It seems like those songs are getting fewer and further between.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's an interesting time too. And not this is by no means in an effort to paint myself a saint, but I do think that as the generations go by, I think the moral compass gets pushed a little bit further, out of the center, and the markets change, and so right now the market it's about one specific thing, and it's driven by a lot of different factors. But I think there are songs like that out there, but it takes a really strong, powerful artist to step out and go, no, I'm not going to put this out. I'm going to put this out because this means something to me. And I believe there's still a lot of country artists out there that still believe in that kind of song. And I have high hopes that those type of songs will come back around. I think at the core of all of us, I think that's what everybody wants to hear. It's in us.
You got to think, I'm probably 9 years old at the time, something like that. And for the longest time, I misunderstood the ending of that song. When you talk about Laura Jean, my 9-year-old mind was like, oh, that's his new love. Rebecca Lynn, they must have broken up. So it wasn't until years later that it finally clicked, like, oh, wait a minute, I've been wrong this whole time. This is a happy song, not a sad song.
Yeah. Well, and another thing, too, I think because of how the market has taken a turn, I think everybody, the market that is being played to, the attention span is so much shorter. I don't know that people want to sit and really follow along with a storyline like that. I do think there are people that do love that stuff, but I think just in the marketplace, it's just tough to. It's like it's a get to the chorus mentality. How quick can you get to the chorus?
Sure. I'm definitely one that likes to kind of sit and go for the ride wherever the song takes me, and that was one of the best at doing that.
That's great. Yeah, me too. I'm just like you.